And welcome back to another edition of From Hustle to Holy, How to Transform Your Business by Igniting Your Divine Feminine. We have another wonderful woman we're showcasing on this series today. We have Sarah, who is a human design expert. Sarah, so glad that you're here and you're joining us on this series. Excited for our interview today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to dive in.
Absolutely. So audience, Sarah is a human design expert. She's a coach who works with individuals and corporations to learn more about how to better communicate, make better decisions, and show up in both their personal as well as their professional lives based on their unique human design. Talk about getting to know yourself from the inside out, right? That's great. I'm so excited and how this all plays into the divine feminine. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up? What was your upbringing like?
Sure. So I grew up between the US and Israel. So two very different places, two very different cultures. I had a pretty standard upbringing. I did live with my grandparents for a period. So I had that ability to connect with them. And I think something that really stood out and also came up when going and thinking about this interview was that I was actually part of an all-girls high school. And so my entire upbringing from sixth grade through high school was in an all-girls situation. And then from there on, I went to engineering school, which at the time was about 12% women. I went into industries that were in the hardware and software space. So it was really fun to kind of think back to my upbringing, which started in a very feminine place and then sort of oscillated into a more male-dominated place.
And so how do you see that your upbringing supported you with where you're at today?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is a lot of times when we think about, male energy, female energy, it's interesting when I think about the fact that I actually was only around female energy until an age where I was able to understand things a little bit differently. And I often am so grateful that I had that experience because I feel like I didn't have to deal with a lot of different drama and things that definitely come up when we're in puberty or in that awkward time in our lives where we're trying to discover the other energy that exists actually in both of in ourselves as well as outside ourselves. So I didn't mention it, but I do think that all of us possess masculine and feminine energy. And when we're only in front of the physical feminine, what does that look like? Because I do think it does play a big role and part in how we show up and also where I am today. It's sort of given me that softer side, but then also being able to use that to my advantage when I'm in a situation that might be physically more male dominated, but then how to introduce more female energy aspects that bring in the feminine in the male population as well.
We are talking about the feminine energy, but it's really about the beautiful attributes of both the masculine and feminine energy. There's really, we need both. And it's just a matter of them coming into harmony and alignment and working together that the magic happens. Right? If we're too much in one area, then we're just a little off balance and not quite into alignment. So at what point in your life did you recognize or notice that there was a lot of masculine energy or masculine ways of being that you just felt were not true for you or didn't feel in alignment for you?
Yeah, so it wasn't actually until I came to the US after my military service. I came to the US with a project I was working on in the hardware space. And so what's interesting is having military experience that was required, I actually felt like I was treated sort of the same. Male and female in the Israeli military, we have to go through the same basic training. It doesn't matter if you're a male or female, if you're going to be going into a sort of combat role or a secretary role, everybody has the same basic training, the same 3 months in the beginning. So I never really understood when I was reading all these articles about how important feminine energy was and masculine energy until I came to the US and I found myself on a panel and I was speaking about being a woman in the tech space, and everybody was talking about how important it is to to call in this feminine energy. And I felt like I'm sitting here, I'm on this panel, and I don't know what they're talking about. And where is this coming from? I always felt like we're on this equal ground, and why is this such a big deal? And then going in and being in California, being in the hardware and then the software spaces and learning, okay, there's actually a big difference in the sense of, how are women treated in these spaces? What does it look like to bring feminine energy in a way that's positive, and also bringing it in to a way that the masculine energy can also understand the difference and understand that they also have this within them. And something that really sort of stood out to me was confidence. Having started a recruitment agency in Israel, many times something that was very interesting to me was that a company would say, we are willing to pay X amount for this role. And the men would always show confidence in the back interview with me. And they would always say, I know I'm worth this amount, but I want to 10X that. And they had no problem asking for more. And then the women, the way they would approach it was, okay, well, this is how much I need to survive. So as long as I get this amount, I'll be really happy. And this will be great for me. So the company is then in this place where they usually will give the amount, a little bit more than what everybody's asking for, but then there's this dispersity, there's this difference in salary. And that's a big topic that I know a lot of women have opinions on, and we see it all the time, that women are paid less, that the cost of living as a female is much higher. And without getting on too much of a tangent, what's interesting is that if the company were to pay the same, then sometimes the women might think, oh, well, this company doesn't need me to work as hard. They have too much money to spend. Where the male energy might feel like, oh my gosh, they're not paying me what I'm worth. So it comes down to, how do we instill more confidence and worth in these women and have women realize that they are just as capable, if not more capable than men. And it's almost going back to the mindset of, traditionally back in caveman times, women weren't looking for jobs. That wasn't the role, and the role has really switched over millennia. And I can get into that a little bit later on with human design, what that looks like, but we're going through a big transformation. And so how do we bring to women the confidence to recognize that it's not about how much do I need to make ends meet, it's more how much do I want to have, and how does that reflect on self-worth, and not feeling guilty about that desire. But yeah.
Leadership starts at a very young age for males. And again, this isn't gender specific, but it's just bringing me to kind of play off what you just spoke about. But, men are introduced into leadership positions much more earlier than females are, and how that increases their confidence. And so if we can really increase the confidence within women, or into at least showing that the feminine energy is powerful. Being in the feminine energy is very powerful in being vulnerable. There's so much confidence in both, using our masculine and feminine attributes and energies. So confidence is big. Confidence is a big one. And so, like going into your human design, it's probably when people can get to know each other a little bit, themselves a little bit more, it even, of course, ignites that confidence that much more. And so you already kind of touched on this, like or maybe you can elaborate. What was the turning point that you noticed, like that you were too much of your masculine, and that you needed things to shift and really bring in more of that feminine?
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned, when I got to the US and was here for work purposes, I started to hear more and more about this dispersity between male and female energy. And I started to realize that I'm in jobs and positions where it's heavily male dominated. And so I really wanted to change that perspective. I worked in SaaS software in San Francisco. It's notorious for being a male dominated industry. I got into the blockchain industry, and I started to create different opportunities to bring more women in and actually highlight that there are women that exist in these industries. And so I kind of started from really recognizing the need to bring more literal physical females to different events. I had so many times, going back to the confidence, a lot of females saying, I don't know anything about blockchain, I can't get a job in that industry. And me feeling like this is the first time that nobody has experience in this industry. There's no such thing as 10 plus years of experience. It's a new industry, it's a new opportunity. And it doesn't matter what your background is, if you have a willingness to learn, you can bring that to the table. So again, being approached with that confidence and starting to host events around females in blockchain and attracting more and more women into the space and showing them that it's really not about what your experience is, but how do you show up and what your interest is. So that's probably was my pinpoint, was starting in realizing, okay, it is strange that I don't feel like there's not a lot of women, because I surround myself by women, but the vision that we have publicly is that there's not a lot of women in this space. So how do I create more access to that? How do I create more opportunity for women to get involved and bring in the feminine to a masculine space?
And thank you for noticing the need, right? I mean, it was, of course, for your own self, right, to own your divine feminine and be in touch with your divine feminine, but also to take it one step further and just recognizing the need, right? You're hearing what other women are experiencing and how it's limiting them and what you get to do to shift that. And so in what ways do you continue to nurture your divine feminine and keep your feminine energy ignited? Because, you know, you're a businesswoman, and it is important to have both, and, you know, having that structure as in the masculine energy. How do you make sure that both are balanced and staying in alignment?
Yeah, so something that I think is very powerful is community, and not necessarily just the standard community. Okay, I need to find more women to hang out with, or I need to incorporate more of this or that. It's actually creating community in what lights personally myself up. And I think with everybody, it's sort of creating community around what excites you. So for me, originally in the blockchain space, understanding that there's not a lot of women, or a lot of women feel like there's not access. So I created a community through something called Blockchain Brunch. And it was literally just food and a panel and a location, and everything else I just really believed would figure itself out. So as long as I had the location, 2 to 3 panelists that could speak about a topic in the space and then invite people, the worst case scenario would be people having a nice brunch on a Sunday. The best case would be realizing that there's other people like them wanting to learn about this space, but not feeling like it was accessible otherwise. So a really fun example of that was working with Coinbase and having women in technical roles come and speak at a brunch. And so when I say speak at a brunch, again, more of a conversation setting and not this big room that feels overwhelming, that feels like there's not that ability. And so when I think about the day-to-day work, going from software to now human design, obviously I would say about 80% of my clients are female, but then the 20% that are male, they're usually in the corporate space, and they're realizing and recognizing the need to learn more about themselves to be able to better show up at the office, at the office, as well as in their personal lives. So I would say that I've had a big shift. I think my work life has always been male dominated, and over the past year, human design has been something I've worked with for 7 years, but only fully got into full time in the past couple of years, and literally shifting the energy there with the audience.
And so in your business today, what do you do to support with, you said 80% are women?
I would say about 80%
right?
women, yeah. So
what do you do in your business today to support your women clients by igniting their divine feminine within human design?
Yeah, so I think what's unique about human design, there are 5 different types. And so first understanding, okay, what is their design type? And then what speaks to them, and giving them different tools that they can use, and also letting them feel seen for the first time. In human design, we can learn about if you're someone that's routine oriented or someone that operates on a totally different schedule. We can learn if someone is more type A versus type B. We can learn if someone works really well under pressure or doesn't work well under pressure, and sort of having those, even in the 15-minute small sessions, understanding the core of the human design type and strategy, and then giving different tools that women can bring in. For example, a lot of us feel guilty when we don't stick to a routine. We feel like I need to have meditation in my life every day at 8 a.m. And then sometimes I'll look at a chart and I'll see, well, it looks like meditation is important for you, but you're not meant to be on a schedule. So how can you make sure that it happens in your day, but not having it every day at the same time? Or a lot of people will want to have a routine because society tells us we need to stick to a routine, and having a routine means we're going to be successful, and not having one means that we've flopped and we're not going to have a good day. And so I try to give women tools of, what are 10 things that you would like to have in a morning routine? And when you wake up, can you choose 2 of those 10 things, so that you know that you can choose affirmations and meditation instead of journaling and reading based on your time. So I really try to give a lot of different tools that make this work accessible, but also so everybody feels seen and feels like they're winning and not feeling like they have to adapt, because so much of our conditioning is to think we must study this, and if we study that, we must work in this, and if we're working, we must work 9 to 5. And I think 2020 has really shown us that that's just not true.
And what this whole brings up, this entire conversation, and just listening to a lot of the other women speaking, it's all about being in the flow. You could still have the structure, so to speak, of what you want to accomplish in your day, but be flexible, be in the flow of things, because that's where the magic really happens, right? And that's very, very much in our feminine.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. That's something that I think is so important for people to realize. What does flow look like? A lot of people, they think, oh, that means I have to manifest, or I have to clear my house with sage, or I have to do this eccentric clearing bath or this moon ceremony. And I like to just sort of lay out all the tools, but then remind the women that I work with that it's not about doing all the things. It's really about, what speaks to you. And based on your human design, if, for example, I'm speaking with a generator, what feels like a yes? What feels exciting to you? What lights you up and you think, oh, I really do want to do that, versus you're not really interested? And then figuring out, okay, where have you been agreeing to things that are not necessarily in alignment for you based on your design and based on how you're operating?
Beautiful. And you have a free gift, free offer for our audience, right? Yes. So they can experience you just a little bit more.
Sure. So I have a free gift. I do 15-minute free readings. In these readings, I'm able to go over the strategy, the authority. I try to give as much juice as possible in these 15-minute readings. So those that come with a bit of knowledge on human design, or they already felt like they've had a reading in the past, we can go into some of the gates and channels and energy centers defined in a chart. And the way to get to that freebie is basically there will be a link with my website, and you can book a free reading. And if you use the word hustle in the checkout, then you can basically communicate with me to set up an earlier date, because I do think by the time this comes out, most of my November is already filled. So just add hustle, and I'll make sure that you guys get to have a 15-minute reading with me earlier than that.
Wonderful, Sarah. Thank you. What a lovely and generous offer that you're providing. And I think it'll allow the audience to really get a little bit more in touch with themselves and how they're operating, and see where they can give themselves some grace because of their human design, right? Any final words to our audience?
Yeah, I just think first, thank you for listening. And also, if you have no idea what human design is, Google is a great place to start. It's encompassing a lot of different modalities that range from the I Ching to the chakra system, as well as astrology and the Kabbalic tree of life. And I highly recommend just checking it out with an open mind and seeing how it resonates for you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us today and allowing folks to experience you and your gifts. And until next time, bye for now.